Okay, so let's unpack this stack of material you pulled together. It's really fascinating stuff. We're looking at soap operas, right? But not just the ones maybe we grew up with on daytime TV.
Exactly. We're broadening the scope. We've got insights into the big British soaps, but also into uh, telenovelas, the huge global phenomenon, and even these like super new micro dramas, tiny little things for your phone.
Right. And the common thread, the thing you flagged, it seems, is this recurring plot device.
Yeah,
Cheating, infidelity, it pops up everywhere.
it really does. It seems almost baked into the DNA of these formats. So
Yeah.
yeah, the idea is to dig into why. Why is it such a persistent theme? How does it look different or maybe the same across these different types of shows and, different cultures?
Perfect. And we've got quite the mix of sources to help us figure this out.
Okay.
You mentioned the British soaps piece. That's from Digital Spy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking serial cheaters.
Yep. Then there's a Wikipedia entry that gives us the whole history and global picture of telenovelas, covering Latin America, Asia, even U.S. attempts.
Yep.
We've also got an article, I think it's Connecticut Public, talking about those microdramas, soap operas in like under 60 seconds.
It's 60 seconds.
Oh,
Wow.
I know, right? And finally, something a bit different, a Reddit thread. From people actually talking about how TV shows portray infidelity and, well, some concerns about that.
Okay, so a real mix of industry insight, history, new trends, and audience reaction. Sounds like a proper deep dive. Our mission then is to explore this long and tangled history of on-screen cheating, see how it's changed, and maybe get a handle on why we find it so compelling. Or sometimes maybe so frustrating.
Sounds like a plan. Where should we start? That digital spy piece.
Yeah, let's kick off there. Because it doesn't pull any punches, does it?
Yeah.
It basically says, what would Soapland be without characters having extramarital affairs and forbidden flings? Answer, a very dull and boring place.
Huh. Yeah, pretty blunt. It sets the stage immediately, doesn't it? It suggests that for these shows to survive and thrive, this kind of drama isn't just optional, it's like essential fuel.
Exactly. Which, as someone who enjoys a good story, it makes you ask
Mm-hmm.
why this particular drama, what's the magic ingredient in infidelity storylines for soaps?
Well, the article gives us some prime examples, doesn't it? It lists some notorious serial cheaters from British soaps. It helps make it concrete.
Yeah, who we got? Peter Barlow from Coronation Street is first up.
Oh, Peter Barlow.
Yeah.
The article mentions him marrying two women at the same time. And that's on top of, multiple other affairs. He's practically a case study.
Definitely setting a high bar for soap opera chaos. Then there's EastEnders, Stacey Fowler and Max Branning. Their history sounds incredibly messy.
Oh, it's iconic soap opera messiness. Years of on-again, off-again affairs, betraying partners, even Stacey having an affair with Max, who was her fiancé's father. It's intricate.
Intricate is one word for it.
Mhm.
And Max himself, multiple affairs, wrecked marriages, families torn apart. It's core to his character, seemingly.
Absolutely. And Hollyoaks gets a mention, too. Mercedes McQueen and Steve Hay, both known for cheating on multiple partners, sometimes with, their siblings, partners, very complicated love triangles, or maybe love polygons at that point.
Polygons, yeah. And it's not just recent characters either.
Yeah.
Robert Sugden in Emmerdale, Paul Robinson in Neighbors. These guys have infidelity storylines stretching back years
Yeah.
across multiple relationships, crossing all sorts of lines.
Right, and the Mitchell brothers in EastEnders. Phil and Grant, that whole Sharon Gate thing, Phil having an affair with Grant's wife, Sharon, it's one of the most famous soap storylines ever, built entirely on betrayal.
It really is legendary. And then there's Maria Connor in Corey. The article notes she's not always the one doing the cheating, but she often ends up involved in affairs, maybe with her friends' partners. She's sort of infidelity adjacent a lot of the time.
Yeah, drawn into the orbit of it. So looking at this list, just from the UK context, infidelity isn't just a trope, it's maybe the trope. It's everywhere, and it has been for ages. What does that tell us about the kind of drama that keeps these shows on the air for decades?
It suggests, I think, that stability is, well, maybe boring for viewers, or at least the writers think it is. Constant conflict seems to be the goal, and infidelity is just such a reliable way to generate high-stakes emotional conflict.
I think you're right. It taps into really fundamental human emotions. Love, desire, jealousy, betrayal, revenge. And in a soap, you can stretch that out forever. The fallout from one affair can fuel storylines for months, even years. New relationships form, old ones break, secrets simmer. It's a gift that keeps on giving, dramatically speaking.
A gift for the writers, maybe not so much for the characters.
Yeah, definitely not for the characters. But yeah, it provides that ongoing disruption, that sense of what's going to happen next, which is crucial for serial drama.
Okay, so that's the long-running traditional soap angle. Now let's zoom out. That Wikipedia entry you mentioned introduces this massive global world of telenovelas. I mean, I knew they were popular, but the scale. It says they're the most popular non-English scripted entertainment globally.
It's pretty staggering when you think about it. And it's not just one thing. You've got Latinovelas, the ones from Latin America, which maybe we think of first, but also Ajanovelas, adaptations and originals from places like the Philippines, Korea, and so on. They have a huge reach.
And a long history, too, apparently. Back to the 1950s. Starting on the radio.
Yeah, evolving from radio dramas, particularly in Latin America. Then they made the leap to TV, often in prime time, which tells you something about their status. And right from the start, the themes were pretty intense.
Intense how?
Well, the entry mentions common early themes revolving around romance, sure, but also big social issues like class differences. And significantly for our chat, it explicitly lists murder, incest, and adultery as recurring elements.
Wow. So infidelity was there from the get-go alongside some other pretty heavy stuff.
Absolutely. And often wrapped up in that classic Cinderella story, you know, the poor, virtuous woman falling for the wealthy. Maybe conflicted, man.
Right. And you can immediately see how infidelity could complicate that storyline, can't you?
Sure.
Adding obstacles, testing virtue, maybe involving jealous rivals or disapproving families.
Precisely. It becomes a key way to inject drama and conflict into those core romantic and social narratives. Does the rich man stray? Does the poor woman get tempted? Does someone from their past reappear? It writes itself, almost.
So if that's the traditional model, what about the changes? The article mentions millennial telenovelas emerging in the 2010s. What's different about those?
Yeah, this is interesting. It seems like a conscious effort to update the format for a younger, maybe more globally minded audience. They're tackling more contemporary themes.
Like what?
Things like LGBTQ plus representation, which wasn't common before,
Wow.
female empowerment storylines, the impact of social media on relationships, and crucially, more morally ambiguous characters, fewer clear-cut heroes and villains.
Okay, so if the characters are more morally gray, how might that change the way infidelity is portrayed?
Yeah.
Is it still the big dramatic betrayal or something else?
That's the question, isn't it? It probably still provides drama, but maybe the why becomes more complex. It might explore the messiness of modern relationships, maybe commitment issues, maybe situations where there isn't an obvious bad guy.
The article mentions The House of Flowers as an example. I haven't seen it, but I heard it had comedic elements too.
Right, and that suggests a different tone, perhaps. Maybe using infidelity for darker comedy or satire about family secrets and hypocrisy rather than just straightforward melodrama. It could be handled with more nuance, maybe exploring the fallout in unexpected ways.
Interesting. So the trope persists, but the handling evolves. And it's not just Latin America or Asia, right? The entry mentioned other regions too.
Yeah, absolutely. It points to Musal Sal in the Arab world. Apparently, these are huge, especially during Ramadan, airing in prime time after the fast breaks.
Wow, that's a massive captive audience tuning in every night.
Exactly. Suggests these stories really resonate.
Yeah.
And then you have Sinetron in Indonesia, Teleseri in the Philippines, each with their own cultural flavor, but likely tapping into similar universal themes.
And given the prevalence in other formats, it seems pretty likely that complex relationships, including infidelity, would be part of the mix of those regions too.
It seems highly probable. While the specific cultural contexts, family structures, social norms, religious influences would shape how infidelity is portrayed and perceived, the fundamental dramatic potential of betrayal is likely universal. That drive for compelling interpersonal drama probably crosses most cultural boundaries.
It really seems to be a global language of drama. Okay, now for something completely different, yet maybe weirdly similar. These micro-dramas. The Connecticut Public article. Soap operas on your phone, in episodes under a minute.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. It sounds almost like TikTok meets soap opera. The titles they mention fake, Married to My Billionaire CEO, Return of the Abandoned Heiress, they definitely scream drama, don't they?
They absolutely do. Billionaires, fake marriages, abandoned heiresses. It's pure soap, just compressed. And it's hard to imagine those plots unfolding without some element of romantic complication or, well, cheating.
Right. In under a minute, you need maximum impact. A sudden revelation of an affair, a cliffhanger kiss with the wrong person that delivers a quick, dramatic hit.
And people are apparently watching hundreds of these clips in like half an hour.
That's what the article suggests. It speaks volumes about our current media consumption habits, doesn't it? Short attention spans, maybe, but still a craving for that emotional roller coaster.
And it mentions women are a big part of the audience, drawn in by the cliffhangers, even if the acting is supposedly cheesy.
which tells you the story hooks are working, the core elements, the relationship stakes, the potential for betrayal, the what happens next, those are still powerful, even stripped down to these bare bones, minute long chunks. It's the same emotional engine, just in a much smaller vehicle.
And these tiny dramas are traveling too, being
Yep.
translated and remade.
Yep. Spanish versions, Japanese versions, getting millions of views, which again points to the universality of these themes: love, loss, ambition, secrets, and yeah, probably infidelity packaged for a global, mobile audience.
It's fascinating how the delivery mechanism changes so drastically, but the core ingredients seem pretty consistent. Whether it's an hour-long TV episode or a 58-second phone clip, the potential for betrayal seems key.
It really does. It makes you wonder, though, does the format change the nature of the infidelity shown? Like in a long-running soap, you can explore the nuances, the motivations, the slow burn, the decades of fallout.
Right, like with the Mitchells or Peter Barlow.
Exactly, but in a microdrama, is it just the shock moment, the quick reveal for the cliffhanger, without much depth or consequence explored?
That's a really good question. Maybe it becomes more about the plot twist than the emotional reality, which actually leads us nicely into that Reddit thread, because that offers a very different perspective.
Yeah, this shifts the tone significantly. This is from Surviving Infidelity, so it's coming from people with direct, often painful, personal experience. And the original poster's point is stark. They feel TV shows promote infidelity as if it's not a big issue.
That's a strong claim. And it's rooted in a personal story, isn't it? Seeing their daughter react casually to cheating on a TV show, possibly a medical drama, and feeling alarmed by it.
It really brings the real-world impact into focus. This isn't just abstract storytelling anymore. It's about how these portrayals might be landing with viewers, especially younger ones, and potentially shaping their perceptions.
And other people in the thread seem to agree.
Oh, yeah. Several commenters echoed that feeling, saying infidelity is often romanticized, used for cheap drama, or that the shows rarely depict the true, devastating, real fallout.
The emotional wreckage, the long-term trust issues.
Mm.
That stuff gets glossed over sometimes in favor of the next dramatic beat.
That's the concern being raised. Someone even compared it to how portrayals of violence or assault can be triggering, arguing that seeing infidelity played out casually or romantically can be deeply painful for those who've lived through it. It highlights the emotional weight it carries for many people.
Which makes you reconsider the examples from the British soaps, doesn't it? All those affairs treated almost like plot points. Are the consequences really shown authentically? Or is it just set up for the next illicit kiss?
It's a fair question. The Reddit thread definitely pushes back against the idea that it's just harmless entertainment. There's a real worry there about normalization, that constant exposure, especially without showing the deep, lasting pain, could lead people, particularly younger generations, to take infidelity lightly, as the original poster put it.
That's a serious concern. Did anyone on the thread offer a counter-argument or acknowledge the history?
Well, some did acknowledge that soaps have always done this, that infidelity is sort of baked into the genre's need for conflict. It wasn't necessarily defending it, but more like, this is what soaps do.
Okay, so it's a known feature for better or worse.
Right. And one commenter did offer a slight counterpoint, mentioning a show like Grey's Anatomy, which has plenty of infidelity, but arguing that it also sometimes shows the devastating consequences, the relationships truly imploding. So maybe it's not always consequence-free, depending on the show or the specific storyline.
So perhaps a spectrum of portrayal, from purely plot-driven to slightly more realistic consequences, but the overall feeling on that thread seemed pretty negative.
Largely, yes. The theories about why it's so common ranged quite a bit. Some cynical takes like lives of shitty people are more entertaining.
Ouch.
Yeah. Others suggested it's just lazy writing, an easy way to create drama without much effort. And then there were even more sort of conspiratorial views suggesting it's part of a wider societal agenda to undermine traditional families.
Wow, okay. So a real range of interpretations, from entertainment value to laziness to social engineering, but all stemming from this feeling that the portrayal is often unrealistic or harmful.
Exactly. It's a really valuable perspective because it's from the audience, unfiltered, reacting emotionally to what they see, often based on painful lived experience. It reminds us that these stories don't exist in a vacuum.
Definitely not. So let's try and connect these dots. We've got the long-form soaps relying heavily on infidelity for decades. We've got telenovelas doing it globally, maybe evolving the how and why over time. We've got microdramas compressing it into tiny addictive bursts. And then we have this audience perspective saying, hang on, this might be trivializing something really serious.
It paints a complex picture, doesn't it? Infidelity is clearly a powerful, reliable engine for drama across all these formats and cultures. The reasons for using it might vary: pure entertainment, creating conflict, exploring character flaws, maybe even reflecting societal shifts or anxieties.
And thinking about that evolution,
Hmm.
from the early telenovelas with their clear moral stakes to maybe more ambiguous characters in millennial telenovelas, to the sheer shock value possibly prioritized in microdramas, has the meaning of infidelity on screen changed?
That's a huge question. Is it still primarily about the ultimate betrayal of trust? Or is it sometimes presented differently now? Maybe exploring polyamory or open relationships, or situations where the cheating is a symptom of a deeper problem rather than the core issue itself. The newer formats and shows targeting younger audiences might be heading in that direction sometimes.
Perhaps. But the fundamental trope of the secret affair, the lie, the potential discovery that seems pretty constant, which brings us back to the core question. Why do we, the audience, keep watching? Across cultures, across formats, from hour-long episodes to minute-long clips, what keeps us hooked on these stories of betrayal?
I think it's got to be a mix of things. There's definitely the thrill of the forbidden, the vicarious experience of intense emotions without personal risk. Shock value plays a part for sure. The suspense of will they get caught.
Yeah, it's a classic hook.
And maybe sometimes there is a level of relatability, even if uncomfortable. Maybe not direct experience, but understanding the complexities of desire, temptation, or relationship dissatisfaction. We recognize the human flaws, perhaps.
Or maybe we just like seeing messy lives that aren't our own. A bit of escapism into high drama.
That's probably a big part of it, too. Escaping into a world where the stakes feel incredibly high, even if it's just about who's kissing whom. These stories tap into fundamental human dramas: love, jealousy, loyalty, betrayal. As long as those are relevant to us, these stories will likely find an audience.
So, wrapping this up, it seems clear that cheating and infidelity aren't just footnotes in the history of soap operas, telenovelas, and now microdramas. They're more like central chapters, constantly being rewritten, but always present.
Absolutely. From those serial cheaters in Corey and EastEnders leaving chaos in their wake, to the complex social dynamics in telenovelas, to the rapid-fire betrayals on our phone screens, infidelity is this incredibly durable source of conflict and, let's face it, entertainment.
But, and it's a big but, that Reddit thread serves as a really important reality check. It forces us to think about the impact. What seems like just another dramatic twist on screen can feel very different to someone who's lived through the real thing. It reminds us that entertainment doesn't happen in a void.
Precisely. And it leaves us, and maybe everyone listening, with something to think about, doesn't it? When you're watching the next big affair unfold on your favorite show, what are you actually taking away from it?
Is it just an entertaining ride?
Hmm?
A distraction? Or is it subtly shaping how we think about relationships, commitment, the consequences of actions? Is it a reflection of reality, or more like one of those funhouse mirrors distorting things?
It's definitely food for thought. Something to mull over next time you're gripped by who's sneaking around with whom. Maybe this whole deep dive will spark some interesting conversations beyond just the screen.